Welcome to Deep Dive. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to welcome everyone out there for joining us today. I'm so excited to introduce my friend Jeffery Kendall, who's the SVP and General Manager of Kony DBX. Jeffery, thanks for joining us.
How are you, Kevin? Good to talk to you again.
Jeffery and I were just catching up. We were in meetings together in Australia some time ago. I can't even remember it. So then we moved on to talking about old age and the loss of memory. But today, I think our topic will be focused around mobility and banking and all kinds of fun stuff, won't it, Jeffery?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fun topics to talk about.
Oh, yeah. But before we get started on that, let's just learn a little bit more about you. So, Jeffery, tell us about your background.
Well, yeah, so I'm a technologist by background, a recovering software developer engineer from early in my career, but over time I've held a variety of different positions in product management, sales, and services for primarily industries that revolve around self-service. So my latest role is I'm the general manager for Kony DBX, which is focused on financial services customers for Kony.
Oh, that's terrific. So where are you calling from? What part of the country?
We're headquartered, and I live in Austin, Texas. So we just finished South by Southwest last night, which was a really interesting experience, especially having it coupled with St. Patrick's Day. I think it was probably the busiest night that I've seen of South by, but it felt like it was a pretty successful event for the city of Austin. So.
Oh, that's terrific. I went to the grocery store yesterday and there was bagpipes playing, people marching with bagpipes up and down the aisles, and it's pretty fun.
Oh, it's a good time.
So I'll be in Austin here in 2 weeks. I'll be at the SAP Ariba Live conference.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'll enjoy your beautiful city.
Excellent. Well, there's so much going on in the city with technology. It has a lot to offer. So it's pretty exciting time.
So that's terrific. Now, Jeffery, you've been at Kony for 8 years, it looks like. And I bet a lot has changed over those 8 years. Why don't you give us in a summary there, tell us about the last 8 years.
Yeah, no, it's been a really fun ride. When I started, we were a lot smaller in scale. So I think I was employee number 200. We've now grown to 1,450 employees. So that's a pretty dramatic growth.
Yes.
And obviously, when you're in a company that's, we weren't quite a startup, but maybe people call it a scale up, really going through the changes and the paces to grow, from a company that had single digit millions in revenue to now triple digit millions in revenue. It's been a pretty wild and exciting ride. And I think the company has changed a lot. The market has changed a lot. Our customers have evolved and changed. So it's been a lot of fun to witness it.
Well, I bet. So I've spent since year 2000, I've been in and around mobility. I served as a CEO in a software company for about 5 years within the enterprise mobility space. And so I have a lot of background in there, but having been out of it for the last 10 years, why don't you give me an update? What's the current state of enterprise mobility?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that we've started to see, and I think it was predictable if you rewind 8-10 years ago, has been the evolution away from focus on enterprise mobility as a siloed focus, and sort of how does it fit into this broader context of digital in general. So obviously, late 90s or early 2000s, web became important, and I think that was myopically focused. And then everybody sort of started focusing on what mobile could do. And now that the number of digital endpoints has just exploded so much that it doesn't make sense to have myopic focus on any one type of channel anymore. And so people have broadened this view of digital because of the rapid inclusion of voice, I think is a real channel now.
Yeah.
Probably expands the definition. And so even in the industry analysts, Gartner has gone from mobile application, MADP as a category to now DXDP as a category. And
okay, acronym alert. Let's go through those for the viewers.
Yeah.
So MADP, Mobile Application Development Platform, right?
Yep.
And what is DBX?
DXDP is with the sort of new category, I think, which people are talking about, which is digital experience development platform. So they've
Oh,
shifted away from this concept of mobile only, but how do you create a platform that can create apps that are web-based, that are also suitable for mobile, that are, maybe voice or other, digital endpoints, automotive, for example. And so that category has really broadened over the past probably 3 years.
okay, that makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, so that's been a big change. And I think the other change has been there's a lot of people who've come and gone in this space in mobile application development and platforms. Some have stood the test of time and remain. I'm proud of Kony because we've kind of been along the journey for the whole time, and they're still going strong.
Yeah.
But I think it's good for the market because it presents new options for the end customers. And it hasn't emerged to be just a one-horse race, which is good for everybody.
But I know that journey, having watched it very carefully, that wasn't always a clear and well-defined journey, was it? Everyone is kind of winding back and forth through the market, trying to figure out where the demand is and where the future is. So there was some speed bumps, I imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that how we view our position in the market and our competitors has changed. And frankly, it changes every couple of years because there are people who are challenging the market and entering into the market. And so that presents a new way of looking at things. So we've had to, keep on our toes. It probably sounds more reactive, but, it's always being aware of who's out in the market and what the different approaches can be.
Yeah, I remember one of the biggest challenges that just about all the vendors in the enterprise mobility space had to deal with is trying to understand how much coding the end user really wanted.
Yeah.
Did they want everything tin plated so you can just pump out simple apps all day? Or was there always this need to customize through additional code? So where has it settled? Because that was a long running debate.
Well, I think that if you look at the broad market, I don't think it's settled yet. I think that the market is still debating this. And it's probably going to be a debate that we're going to continue to have for the next, at least 5 years, if not more. But the way I kind of get my arms around it, Kevin, is I think about it in terms of a spectrum. Sort of, if you think about some of the new categories of app development, on the left hand with the sort of simplest approach, sort of citizen developer, no code, call it, just sort of, a visual interface to go build an app. But, really, really quick and easy for people to do it, but probably a huge trade-off in terms of power and flexibility. The next on the spectrum is I think probably the most promising category right now, which is low code. And low code says, hey, we're going to still have the need for enterprise development principles, security, enterprise scalability, all those things that matter. But we're going to provide developers with an advantage of speed by presenting things that they don't have to do as much code around. And then, sort of on the furthest right of the spectrum is the traditional, write everything from scratch, which I think a lot of hardcore developers are still there. They still want the power, the flexibility and control of doing everything from scratch to make sure it's exactly how they want it. But I think the mass market is going to probably land on a solution more in the low code space that gives developers that power and flexibility. So finding a balance there, I think, is the winning strategy probably.
So if I look back at the last 10 years, almost all the vendors that I was watching at that time are gone.
Yeah.
They either just kind of went out of business, or they got absorbed, or they had a fire sale and just sold their code base into somebody else. Who's left out there, and who do you see is your competition coming from different directions nowadays?
Yeah, I think it is coming from different directions. I think there's different categories. And again, it speaks to the broadness of what mobility is as a category, because it's so, applicable to lots of different components of the marketplace. But if you look at some of the entrants, you sort of migrate to where the industry analysts say the top players are, you see folks like Salesforce. And I think Salesforce is an interesting player in this space. But and I think they have a lot of interesting technology around mobility, but it's highly predicated upon building on top of the Force platform or apps that are related to the Force platform. That's evolving, but I think that that's still what people think of when you think about Salesforce as a mobility leader. Other entrants, I think, have grown in this space with us as well. We looked at especially the emerging low-code players. OutSystems is a name that you obviously you see a lot there. Mendix is interesting, but they've been acquired by Siemens. So what the future that holds for having an acquisition of that nature will be interesting. I think a lot of the people that you probably saw 10 years ago that got acquired, a lot of those companies have sort of folded into the back end of those companies and aren't really getting a lot of focus and attention now. So I wonder about companies that are in that space of being acquired and how much they can actually focus on this space going forward.
Oh yeah, I imagine many of those are just trying to fill out their requirements for their own systems.
Exactly.
And they have mobile offerings within all of their various applications and systems and platforms. So they just, that's their primary focus is internal integration with their own systems, I imagine.
Yeah. And I think it's the age-old thing of, what really matters and what makes companies win is having good focus. And so when you bring something that it has that focus, but then blur it with lots of other competing priorities into some of these big, sort of monolithic enterprises, it gets hard to focus. So
yeah. So I recently was reading a report from Forrester, and they were talking about Kony and the fact that it looked like you guys were preparing to develop some software as a service models around different verticals. How's that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Over the past few years, we've had a really, really strong growth in financial services. And about a year and a half ago, we came out to the market and declared our intent to focus and lead in the financial services space. Over the past 10 years, we had a legacy and a history of working with lots of different banks and financial institutions, but it was a lot of custom apps. It was, some of the big money center type banks that we were helping build scalable consumer applications for. And so we decided to take a lot of those lessons learned that we had early on in our company and to productize, if you will, those lessons that we had learned into SaaS-based applications. And so we've had such dramatic success over the past year and a half as we've released our banking portfolio, which is the DBX or digital banking experience platform business that I lead, that we've also, sort of started to use that as a blueprint for thinking about how we enter and get focused on other industries as well. And I think, some of the ones that are interesting to us are obviously energy and utilities. Mm-hmm. I think the explosion of IoT and field service applications, that's a ripe space to go in and focus on creating SaaS-based applications. And then I think probably, a near second would be healthcare. That's an industry that obviously is mobility has, and digital has tons of potential that people still, they're not realizing the power that's going on in those. And so I think that's another ripe industry for focus for us.
So help us understand what part is like specific to an industry and what part of your solutions are the platform layer that you would actually reuse across all the industries?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So if you think about what Kony has as two offerings, we really have sort of two parts to it. Number one is we recently launched Kony Quantum. So it's basically that is the new name for the consolidated effort of the Kony development platform. And over the years, as we've done sort of, evolved that product and enhanced it, it really deserved a different brand and a different focus. And so on March 12th, we launched the Kony Quantum brand. And that platform is common to everything that we do. So in banking, when we have our banking specific applications like a online banking and retail banking, we have a lending application and various other ones. All of those applications are built upon that Kony Quantum foundation. And so that really serves as the underlying transportable across industry component of our portfolio.
Oh, that's powerful then. So where do you see enterprise mobility going in the next 5 years? I mean, it's changed so much. It's been a winding road, and here we are. So I'm putting you on putting a spotlight on you, Jeffrey. Where do you think it's going to go?
Well, I think that, a lot of the things, if I look at the next 5 years, we're going to continue to evolve things that people predicted would become mainstream, but maybe aren't there yet. I think end user experience is going to continue to be a huge concept for people. Customer experience will always matter, but it's getting more and more focus as sort of one of the things that you have to worry about in digital. I think the thing that's going to evolve is now we're starting to talk about developer experience when it comes to what is the experience that a developer has when they're using your tools to build digital applications. How do you make it easier? How do you get them on board faster? That's an area that in this Kony Quantum release that we've brought out was one of the absolute main focuses. It was, hey, we've got a lot of power in this platform. Now, how do we harness it and make sure that we can put it in the hands of millions of users and realize that potential very quickly? And I think that, the next thing that I would probably point out is the lines between native and web continue to blur. And that's a big topic in terms of how people think about developing their mobile app portfolio and their digital app portfolio. Do I build native? Do I build with web? I think Google and the support of PWA, which is progressive web apps, is going to probably be a topic that becomes more and more important as the power of PWA becomes more realized. There's a lot of things you can do now that you used to have to do natively that PWA allows you to do. Offline access and more powerful apps. And then I think that there's a topic that I'm really interested in that I'm watching, and we've sort of given it a name, which is this human plus digital. So right now, it feels like in digital and self-service and mobility that everything has been focused on the technology piece and less about what the sort of human interaction and connection that is empowered by some of those technologies. And so we at Kony talk about this human digital strategy, which is it's sort of how do your end customers leverage that digital potential to actually make meaningful connections back through human and social. And it's interesting when you look at the most powerful mobile applications in the world, they have something in common, which is they're all threaded together by the fact that they're mainly a human connection app. Facebook, chat, WhatsApp, all the things that we just sort of think about as the dominant mobile apps that have driven this, were all about connecting humans at their end case. And so I think that's an interesting topic that we're starting to see in financial services, which we're really, really jazzed about, which is I want to have a self-service relationship with my bank, but sometimes I want a human there. And how do I use digital to make that connection to an actual person at the bank or the institution much easier? And I think that's a trend that I think will get a lot more attention over the next 5 years.
Well, I'm really excited about that one because I can see the utility of that in everywhere. I was trying to talk to my bank the other day, and their website, would give you the very basic summaries of different programs. And I'm like, I need the details. I need a human, so I could see the advantage of if there was a chat icon right there and I just hit it and I'm talking to a loan officer or somebody that knows what they're doing. That would have been a very good experience. So I look forward to any of those human connections.
Yeah, that's an area I really try to focus on with our banking customers. It's just, when I'm looking at my application, for example, if I'm looking at transactions in my banking app and I see something that I suspect of fraud, why can't I just tap on that transaction and pull up a real-time chat session or a real-time video session or a connection with another human that says, hey, I think this is fraud. I don't really need to go through an automated process of submitting that, but I need help right now.
Yes.
And I need it in a personal way. I think that's a really powerful trend. And I think it's a way for, one of the big sort of focus points in financial services is that the big banks continue to do digital very well and they sort of lead the pace. So Bank of America, Chase, they're spending billions of dollars on mobility for their customers, and they're outpacing the ability for regional banks and credit unions to keep up with them. And so, you're trying to sort of provide an advantage to that smaller end of the market so that they don't go out of business or get acquired, or that they can, have a sustainable business long term. And that's really our focus for DBX, is sort of, helping the smaller and medium sized banks compete against the big banks.
That's commendable. It's difficult, and I wish you the best of luck on that one, Jeffrey, because I think the market certainly is asking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that.
Yep. So Jeffrey, I want to thank you so much for giving us some of your Monday morning here to share your insights, your knowledge, your experience, your background, and into the future. So thank you so much, Jeffrey.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Kevin.